Hey, Will, I have a question for you. Do you care how our names are displayed?
No.
Okay.
All is good on my end. Start in 15 seconds.
I will call to order this regular meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission this Tuesday, May 26th, 2020. And we can rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, has the roll been taken?
It has. All are present tonight.
Before we get started tonight, I'd just like to maybe we can take a moment of silence just to recognize all our fallen veterans. This past weekend was Memorial Day, and just want to recognize all our fallen heroes. And also, in the United States, we've reached about 100,000 deaths from COVID-19. And also this past week, our neighbors to the west or east in Midland and surrounding area have just been devastated by a major flood. And I think it just would be appropriate if we took a moment to recognize that and just take a moment of silence. Thank you, everybody. A lot of sacrifices have been made lately and in the past, and I think it's good to recognize those sacrifices that people have made. So to begin tonight, we have a presentation from the LDFA by Jim McBride from Middle Michigan Development Corporation and Aaron Strang of Central Michigan University Resource Corporation. They're joined to us in this meeting today, and I believe they have a video presentation that they've put together.
Yes, Mayor, you're correct. We're going to play the video, and then they'll both be available for any follow-up questions that you may have.
Good evening, everyone. I am Aaron Strang, and I'm here with Jim McBride, and we are here to talk a little bit about the Local Development Finance Authority and the Tax Increment Finance Authority around the Smart Zone District. Just to provide a little bit of background, Smart Zones are geographic zones created by legislation. This was initially formed with a partnership being the university, the city, and the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, in which created the Local Development Finance Authority and the Business Accelerator, which is CMURC. Fast forward, we had an extension, about a 5-year extension that was approved by the State Treasury Department in 2016, and which the City of Mount Pleasant Commission voted to approve. There are 21 smart zones in this state. This is a map. As you can see, we are number 7 in the geography there. You'll also see number 8, which was Midland, which CMURC is now responsible for as well. So essentially, our organization covers the whole yellow area. And then north, as you can see, there are no smart zones north. And so as it relates to some of the business accelerator opportunities and programs that we facilitate on behalf of the state, we are that area in which encompasses and is headquartered here in Mount Pleasant. As it relates to the Local Development Finance Authority itself, you have a contract both with the CMU Research Corporation and the Middle Michigan Development Corporation in coordination for the Smart Zone development, land preparation and management. For Business Incubator, mention the Michigan Economic Development Corporation programs and facilitating those. And for the assistance in growing business. Also, the Smart Zone marketing in recruiting and retaining companies to be located in the Smart Zone geography. Currently, within the 300-acre designation of the Smart Zone, which is on the south end of University campus, we have a number of current clients that are already in the space. So we have American Mitsuba, Isabella Bank, Fairfield Inn, Comfort Inn, and Conference Center, Bennigan's Grill, and a number of life science companies, in addition to some technology companies. So I'll let you kind of read through those, but already have a very good start within the Smart Zone land itself. Wanted to provide a couple of highlights. Now, you all should have received the 2019 report from the LDFA, which outlined both CNURC and MMDC's activities as it related around those items that we identified above. But we just wanted to highlight a couple additional things from 2019. We were able to move forward with a conceptual design plan, both with the CMU Board of Trustees and thanks to you all, the City Commission endorsement, which really transitioned the idea and concept from a historic research park environment to a mixed-use tech park. And we were very happy for your support in addition to the CMU support in moving that conceptual design plan forward. And it puts us in a great position to continue our efforts in recruiting and retaining companies to build within the Smart Zone. We also, you might have noticed back at the end of the year, we were able to get some new signs installed, which really anchor the entrances of the location and really create and start with the branding efforts that we've been working on to show people that this land is ready for development.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here. Part of the 2019 highlights, beyond what Aaron has already talked about, the American Mitsuba expansion. American Mitsuba was able to get a contract to start building auto parts for BMW and Ford. This is over and above what they've currently been doing for Honda and other Japanese makes. They've done some work in the past for Chrysler and General Motors, but this is an ongoing contract for Ford and BMW, which are new to them. And to do this, they had to do an expansion. They have a couple of plants that this could have gone. The favored one was in Kentucky, Bardstown, Kentucky, because they had excess capacity there. And instead of going there, they are expanding here in Mount Pleasant, where they had to actually modify the building. So it's much more expensive to do that here. To incentivize this, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, in coordination with our organization, provided a $360,000 business development grant to help encourage them to locate that expansion here. The city of Mount Pleasant, all you folks, approved an abatement, a property tax abatement as well. So the combination of those two really showing some incentive for American Mitsuba to keep that business here, encouraged them to make the decision to do that. And so that was a huge success for our area. And of course, that expansion is all built out now. Unfortunately, American Mitsubishi has been shut down due to the COVID-19, but they're anxious to get back up and running and start producing parts for all their traditional customers, as well as their new customers in Ford and BMW. In addition, one of the things that Aaron and I have been talking about is the fact that when the broadband was put into the park originally with all the water and sewer connections, it was really only put in for about half of the park. So a lot of the area that we're trying to develop now, that's west of the CMURC building, that has not been all connected with broadband. So we were able to get a $100,000 grant from the MEDC to finish up all the main roadways to get the broadband connectivity all the way through the park. Now, this will still mean that any future tenant will have to connect up to that trunk line, but at least now that's all going to be done throughout the park.
So from a highlight perspective, we had this metrics on our document that we provided to you all for the 2019 grant report, or 2019 report, sorry, in which we identified the total smart zone development and site selector relations. There's a lot of legwork that goes into a lot of these projects. As Jim mentioned, Mitsuba, in addition to the expansion and the grant dollars that were received, there was the stormwater ordinance that needed to be determined between the university and Mitsuba and the city. And so a lot of those other components and details take a lot of time, energy, and effort. And so we try and quantify those to provide the data for you all to see the efforts that we're doing to make some development happen. So just real quickly, this smart zone development and site selector relations, CMURC had 48 of those. As it relates to the retention and company visits, there were 4 different projects that were conducted in 2019. Smart zone jobs created. There were CMURC was directly connected to 78 of those, and we were able to facilitate $315,000 over that for companies within the smart zone, and we earned a number of media and articles to market the smart zone itself.
In addition to that, so we at MMDC are always invited when Michigan Economic Development Corporation brings site selectors into the state. And so we put together a brochure for site selectors. These are folks from outside of the state of Michigan, for the most part, who are coming in, taking a look at the state. And we have that brochure that I think all of you have seen. That we provide to site selectors, and that has generated actual visits up to the park. And so we are, through the MEDC and our efforts and coordinating with Aaron, able to reach these national and international site selectors to get them interested in this park. So that would be the 23 contacts there. The company visits, that's within the park. Smart Zone jobs created. That was all Mitsuba. And of course, this over $6 million in new investment, that's almost entirely American Mitsuba in terms of that investment number for last year. And then the earned media is just the other things over and above what Aaron already does. Those are a few unique things that we were able to do. So a grand total of 78 earned media. So when you really look at this, it's an awful lot of activity and a very large amount of investment in the Smart Zone in 2019.
There's a lot of work and energy and effort and quantitative data that we've just provided to you for 2019. But if we back up and just look at a high level of all of that, in the past few years, we've really been working on getting everything in order, removing all the barriers that were currently in the projects and the land development itself. And so we're in a really good position for 2020 and beyond. So far in this first quarter, you will have received the first quarter report from us, and we've had a lot of good activity beginning this year, even with all of the pandemic and everything that's happening. We do have one project that is currently in discussions. It has been put forward to the Board of Trustees for initial approval of the concept itself. So we've got one individual, company that's ready to move forward, and we're proceeding with that piece. also been able to work with the Association of Research Parks. CMU and is not the only research park that exists. Research parks are around the U.S. in which we have able to build good relationships and have started networking to identify different structures that are in place to be able to develop the land itself. We're also in procedures between the university and the city as it relates to the CART covenants. The initial CART covenants as drafted and revised don't necessarily align with the current conceptual design plan. So we've been working through and collectively working on that next draft in which you all will be presented with to review and for your input as well later down the road. We have also, in just this last week, been in great conversation with Cranes. Cranes Detroit does a Cranes business edition in which we have been pitching and discussing their highlighting of the smart zone. And so that will, with all things aligning correctly, that will be in the June publication of Cranes Business. So a lot of great activity happening.
Yeah, that is really great news. And I just want to make a comment also on this potential project that Erin's talking about. We can't reveal who it is at this point, but I will tell you, I got the phone call, and the company was about ready to sign documents for a location in Montcalm County, and they just wanted to check before they made a final decision. They just wanted to check on availability in this area, and I was able to connect with Erin, and she immediately got a hold of CMU Board of Trustees and the president, and it's looking pretty good, I would say, Erin, that this may be coming in here, and it was almost a done deal that was going to go elsewhere. In addition to that, on the next slide here, as many of you know, MMDC was one of 15 local organizations that were selected by the MEDC to facilitate the small business relief program. That was a total of $10 million in grants and $10 million in loans. Our grant amount, based on a slightly over our per capita ratio, ended up being $200,000 for Isabella, Clare, Gratiot, and Gladman counties. So we administered those grants. In our local Isabella County, we had a total of 84 grants, majority of which are in the city of Mount Pleasant. But so that was really good news. But then there was an additional amount, and we were able to secure one of our $50,000 loans, one of our four $50,000 loans for the 4 counties for a company that is within the smart zone. We really should wait for that statewide release to come out, but it's not hard for you to figure out who that might be.
And just in closing, the work that Jim and I do is very specific to the smart zone and the development of, but we also have additional pieces that we felt were relevant to highlight, and we're calling it Companies to Community. Chargeover is a company that has worked with CMURC for a number of years as a coworker, also has worked with MMDC, and is now working on their downtown location. Yeah. In addition to Courtney Jerome Media, in which she started with CMURC and building her business, and is now downtown as well. So even though these two specific companies didn't locate in the smart zone, the work that was done, thanks to the dollars that we received from you all in this efforts, have been really benefited the downtown area. And the one last one that I wanted to highlight was Enterprise Tax Solutions. They actually moved into Enterprise Tech Park, or Enterprise Park, over by the Home Depot. So even though not directly within the city limits, definitely have created jobs and are building within our community. So we're very happy about that work and those efforts.
Absolutely, because it's not just the companies that start up here in the zone. It's the companies that are grown in cooperation between the Smart Zone and the work we do at MMDC. These entrepreneurial startups that actually, can become bigger businesses as they grow. So it's really good for our tax base, good for business, good for the community. So really, that's our presentation, and I think we'll be switching over to Zoom here to answer your questions.
Okay. Just like to say thanks to Jim and Aaron. And do you guys have any more just additional comments? I know that was a pre-recorded
Yes.
presentation. So if there's anything more you'd like to add, feel free to.
Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
I sure can.
I did miss, I had one spot where I misspoke. I said 84 grants in Isabella County. It's really $84,000 in grants for Isabella County. This is the original MEDC amount, and sorry, I was talking kind of fast and I switched it. So it's really 50 grants that went into Isabella County for grant for 1,000. One, I did have a request, how many of those are actually in the city limits of Mount Pleasant? And that would be a total of 34 of those 50 grants were the city limits. We have some that are just on the outside, like Maury Courts and the Mount Pleasant Discovery Museum, but they're not in the city limits. So they're not counting, I'm not counting those. And so that was a grand total of $56,000 out of the 84,000. So pretty good chunk of these grants did go within the city limits. In addition to that, Dow and Chemical Bank contacted me. Now, remember, these are grants, these ones that I already spoke about. Those are grants that are through the MEDC, through that original grant amount. Dow and Chemical Bank added some additional money. So I had a grand total of 25,000 additional funds. And I can tell you that those, again, 6 of those grants went to entities within the city limits. In this case, 4 of them were nonprofits. So that's Special Olympics, Christian Counseling of Mid-Michigan, Home Builders Association of Central Michigan, and the Humane Animal Treatment Society, all for $2,500 each. And then Bill's Custom Fab, they were one of the manufacturers that had applied. And we were able to give them a grant of $5,000. And then On the Mark, which is in the North Industrial Park, received a grant for $1,000. And this is all private money, Dow money and Chemical Bank money that came in after the MEDC money came in. We were, again, selected as one of the 15 organizations. I already covered that in the thing. But in addition to all of this, we have another opportunity with the deadline this Friday. I've been working closely with Bill Merdeza and Michelle Sponseller. This is a downtown only application. So it's only good for those businesses in the downtown area. And they have to be businesses that didn't already receive a grant from the MEDC. So we have 22 applicants as of today's deadline noon. And then we are going through those. I'm meeting with Bill and Michelle tomorrow, separate meetings. We're going to go over all these applicants and rank them and get these in and try to get another $50,000 yet from the MEDC for these downtown businesses. So we're really trying to do everything we can in the midst of this crisis that we're in to get cash to these businesses that have been closed down. And we've done well. And I think that, it goes without saying that the relationship we have, longstanding relationship with the MEDC, has enabled us to do this sort of thing.
I'd like to say thanks.
So any questions?
Yeah. Oh, I would.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I just
If there's
want
bit of a
I
lag.
say thanks. I know a lot of small businesses have been, applying for those small grants and loans lately, and obviously with the COVID-19 crisis, it's a big help keeping people in business and working at a tough time. So
Absolutely.
I see, Aaron, did you have any comments? I don't want to anymore.
Nope, I think I think our presentation covered it. Looks like Commissioner Tolis might have a question though.
Yep.
I do.
Actually, I do.
I'm looking at page 6 of the first quarter, And MMDC has made one company call in the first quarter, and that was a visit to American Masuba, and no new jobs were created.
Correct.
What's your forecast for the rest of the year with CMU with a 20% budget cut across the board? You've got all kind of businesses that are filing for bankruptcy, and many businesses are going to go out. What's your forecast for getting new businesses in here? I see you said next to Home Depot, that tax business that came in. That's an existing building that my friend owns.
Sure.
That company moved from one spot to another spot. So
Sure.
really,
So, yeah, so if I could, so Enterprise Tax Solutions, I'll give you a little background. Tina McCormick, we have worked with her. She was originally from the Farwell Clare area, in which she moved out of the state to start her to be involved with different businesses. So she moved back to be close to her family, and that's when we started working with her. She was one individual looking to start her own business, and so we were able to connect her up with the university, with different members of the SAP program, with faculty members, and essentially grew her business to 10 people. And she was one of our coworkers in this CMURC building itself. Right in March, actually, is when she outgrew our space. So her and her employees, based on her business that she's been able to build, grew too large for our facility, which then makes the move out into the community, which is exactly what we're here for. Unfortunately, she needed a quick move, and so we didn't have time to build a building and put it up in the smart zone. But we were able to work and get her in an existing building within the community. So essentially, she is looking to hire 2 new people right now. So to kind of answer both of your questions with one example, she's currently looking at hiring accountants and different people with different programming skills right now, as she continues to have more work than she can handle. So some businesses are thriving right now, and some businesses are very much on the other side of that. So we're helping to do whatever we can on both arenas.
thank you.
I would add to that, well, your question also, Commissioner, was about the forecast. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, we're in some very challenging times, and I would expect that, we're hearing different things and, about potential bankruptcies and so on. I think that the fact that we've been able to leverage cash and loans through the state, that frankly, if we hadn't been here, this all would have been administered out of Saginaw County or Saginaw Future. And I think we've done really well. So we did get a $50,000 loan for the Comfort Inn, which they greatly appreciate. It's a very low interest loan with 10 years payback, 0.25%, which is unbelievable interest rate. And then there were 4 loans. We did 4 in the 4-county region. That's Isabella, Clare, Gladwin, and Gratiot. So 3 of the loans went to Isabella County, and really 3 of them are in the city of Mount Pleasant, because Mountain Town and and Hunter, they have one location in the township and then 2 locations in the city. So I guess that would be shared with Union Township. So I mean, 3 of the loans of the 4 that we had that we recommended to the MEDC are coming into the city of Mount Pleasant, helping businesses, and that's all we can do in a situation like this, is do what we can to help. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff that's way beyond Aaron's control and my control, but we can do what we can with the funds that we have and leverage everything we can. And like I say, in spite of the fact that, we've got issues out there, major issues, we have one company that's looking to expand in the smart zone and put up a new building. So we'll have more to share about that in the near future.
I'd recognize Commissioner Gillis.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McBride and Ms. Strang, for doing what you can to help our business community. I hope the little bit that we can do helps them survive maybe another month. In some of your tallies, I noticed that we haven't had any new groundbreaking buildings built in the smart zone for several years. This finance authority has been in effect since 2000. It was under a different name and for the capture of those taxes, and I think that was back to 1983. So for 4 decades now, we have been capturing taxes from the smart zone on the hopes of previous city commissioners, on the hopes that we would have buildings built on that land to tax the building, of course, because we don't own the land. CMU owns the land, so therefore it's tax exempt. The only way we can get our benefit from this finance authority, the tax capture, is if we are building the land, some shovel ready, and I haven't seen that from on the city commission. And but I noticed there was five jobs that were created this year within the smart zone itself, which is what I'm assuming the taxes captured are to develop the smart zone. But within the city proper, there was 5 jobs added. Do you know specifically where those jobs were added? In which business was that? Mitsuba? I know they added some last year.
Right, that is correct. 5 jobs for Mitsuba. You're talking about Q1, right?
Correct.
Yeah, those are Mitsuba.
Okay. So it's the same entity that we gave the tax abatement, and then you acquired some grants for them to increase 5 employees within the smart zone. Okay, well, and second, I'm going on to the CMURC website. We do provide entrepreneurial opportunities, marketing, business options, business plans, all paid for, paid for with our taxpayer dollars that are being captured there. Many of these entities I see are moving to Saginaw, Bay City area. The CMURC area includes 8 counties, so it's not specific to Mount Pleasant or Isabella Clare. We go all the way over to Bay City, and I see some of the businesses that you promote on that website actually is not even in the area. So we're allowing our tax dollars, and I totally support entrepreneurship development through programs and leaders that can provide that. Are you still hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's giving me a message. But I don't believe it's taxpayer responsibility to provide entrepreneurs that money through our taxes, because what I believe the finance authority was to increase our taxable value on buildings, not to invest into the entrepreneurship. And I'm for entrepreneurs. I love creative minds, but I don't think the cost benefit of our tax dollars going to that development, programming, marketing, all helping them with small business loans should be on the taxpayers. I think there's other avenues where that need could be addressed without using our tax dollars that we desperately need here in Mount Pleasant. Not necessarily on the south side of town to compete with our other economic areas, but I think we are giving a lot to this just one area for development, and somehow and literally leaving some of our others areas of Mount Pleasant behind, or what taxes could be used. We have a problem with parking lots downtown we don't have enough money for, infrastructure, safety, lots of other things. And I know I've spoke to you about this before, about the use of the tax dollars and the cost benefits. So.
Sure. Absolutely. And if I could just make one point of clarification. So within CMURC, we have 4 different facilities, one in Bay City, one in Saginaw, one in Midland, and one in Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant is our headquarters, and the information that we reported in the LDFA report is just those things associated with the dollars that we receive from the LDFA and from that piece. So there's a number of other things outside of the dollars that we receive from this organization that go to support entrepreneurial development and facilitation of different programs and things associated with entrepreneurship. So even though you see companies that are in other areas, and our charge per the Michigan Economic Development Corporation is serving a larger geography, we are very specific in our financial accounting and everything else as it relates to the dollars that we receive and where those dollars go. And we maintain that they stay in the Mount Pleasant area and associated with the Mount Pleasant operations for the Smart Zone development.
Yep, that's absolutely right. I mean, the money does stay local.
Okay, great. That makes me feel a little better. One question, well, I want to say again, Mr. McBride, I thank you for all your connections through MEDC. I know as a state representative for 8 years, I know you have made friends and contacts through that office, which then in turns probably helps a lot of businesses in this area because of those contacts and relationships you made while you were in the state capitol. I do want to ask, and this might be a brainstorm from 2 years ago, but you MMDC received a $100,000 grant for defense contracts. From what I remember, and it was a hard call because I had to actually look it up online. I remembered something. It was $100,000 Defense Industry Growth Area Grant, where you took $50,000 of that grant to hire your own employee as the administrator, and the other $50,000 of that grant that came from the MEDC was for administrative help. Not going to a business to recalibrate their production line, but for administrative help. From what I remember, it was $20,000 to the Isabella County area for a business that might be able to have a defense contract, and your person that you hired for half of that grant money amount, $50,000, has there been any progress into contacting anything within our area, Isabella County, for that $100,000 and the $20,000 for administrative help for defense contracts on one of our possible industry facilities?
Yes, and let me give you a little more background here. So that 100,000 that you mentioned, you're correct. 50 of it went to hire a new employee, because we were required to do that under that grant, that we had to have a dedicated person, because this, our service area was Region 5. So primarily focused on Isabella, Clare, Gladwin, Gratiot, and Aranac counties, but also available for service in Midland Bay and Saginaw on request. And so that was, so I had, obviously had to hire a person to do all of that. We did hire Brian Roberts. And then the additional funds, we did $10,000 per county administrative that went to Aranac, Gladwin, Gratiot, Clare, and Isabella counties to really help those county organizations get up to speed on what was going to be required to help companies pursue federal contracts, primarily defense and homeland security. So that is what all that money went toward. So we didn't keep the, we did keep a portion of that from an administrative standpoint, but we did revenue share that with the other counties. In terms of your other question about what the results have been, so we are required to, basically what Brian is doing is getting out and calling on companies all throughout this region, getting companies that have maybe considered, or maybe they've never considered pursuing a federal contract, to consider to do it, and then getting them interested, helping them with that initial those initial contacts, and then working with the Procurement Technical Assistance Center in Saginaw with the detail-oriented stuff with the filling out of the contracts. So a number of companies have pursued federal contracts, and we've had a few successes. And so the Michigan Defense Center has said, they're very happy with what we've done, and we're one of the benchmarks. Us and there's two others, one in Macomb County and then Lansing, that are used as the benchmark for how to do it right. And we're kind of the furthest north and most rural, but we've had some success of companies that have decided to pursue those contracts. I know Bill's Custom Fab, that's just one of them on the mark. Those are, I didn't bring all of that, so I wasn't anticipating this question. I'm just speaking off of memory. But we've had a number of those companies locally decide to pursue those kind of contracts.
Great, thank you. So you don't know specifically if they had the contracts, but you're aware that they are trying to pursue the contracts.
They're pursuing them, and I'd have to ask Brian, because again, we didn't have this on the agenda, so I wasn't prepared for the question, but I'd have to ask Brian, for that list. But we are required by the rules of the grant that we have to work with the PTAC in Saginaw, and they are the ones that actually do the paperwork. But here's the problem, Commissioner. The PTAC is one person. That's Delana Spates-Allen. She's very good, but she covers 8 counties, and she doesn't have the chance to get out and, I'll use the word sell the program. That's not exactly the right word maybe, but to get out there and make the businesses understand that opportunity is there. She doesn't have the ability to get out very often, and she mostly does follow up with the companies that are pursuing the contracts. So Brian has done a great job getting out there and talking to all kinds of companies about the possibility of pursuing this, and has actually assisted in helping them connect the dots and pursue that.
Thank you, Mr. McBride.
And zero tax dollars from the city of Mount Pleasant go to fund Brian or any of this program.
Yes, I was just hoping. I know in the article there was I've got it up in the back of my screen where the goal was at least 12 companies in year 1. So I don't know if he met that goal, but I would love if you could send us that information on those 2 companies that you spoke of, On the Mark, and what was the other one?
Bill's Custom Fab.
Okay. If you have any update, I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Ronan.
I just wanted to say to Jim and Aaron that I'm new on the commission, and I don't have the history that some of the other commissioners do, so I apologize for that. But it's just nice to see that the guys have risen to the occasion to help out local neighbors and local people in the community who are dealing with some fairly significant financial shortfalls. So it's I think if you weren't in the area, we'd have limited access to much of what you've done. So I love you. We're blessed to have you here. I want to say thank you very much for that, and looking forward to see that center grow. So continue the good work. I don't have much of a question. I guess that's more of a statement than a question.
Thank you. We do our best.
Seeing no other hands up, I think just like to say thank you again to Mr. McBride and Strang, and really appreciate your efforts in the community to retain businesses and jobs, and to really develop the economy here in Mount Pleasant and the Mount Pleasant greater area. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is any additions or deletions to the agenda tonight? Commissioner Gillis?
Thank you. I just want to make a statement to the additions to the agenda. Last commission meeting, we added, got a supermajority vote and added something to the agenda to discuss about the licensing waiver for outdoor dining. And it was probably 30 or 40 minutes of commission time that we used trying to get everybody to understand what was happening, the motion, amendments to the motion. We all remember 2 weeks ago when the motion started to become so cumbersome, we had no idea what we were trying to vote on. We did get a lawyer's opinion and then revamped the motion so we wouldn't have to go to all hand votes. And, you know, it wasn't efficient nor expedient with that added to the agenda. My comment is that is, and we now have on this week's agenda, on tonight's agenda, another version of that, more elaborate, of where we can open up outdoor retail facilities or spaces where people can use the extra area provided on their private property, or if we decide to give public property for use. But we're going to be discussing that whole thing again tonight. So sometimes adding things to agendas aren't the most expedient or efficient way to get something to be discussed. I know Commissioner Ronan, you work with Miss Vice Mayor Perschbacher, and you see her hopefully frequently if you're in the same building. But Vice Mayor and Mayor sets the agenda. So if there's something really pressing that you, and that might have been your timeline, I understand, Commissioner Ronan, but there is access, and I know you have access to our Vice Mayor. We all have access to the Vice Mayor, but my point is that we now have something on the agenda that's somewhat similar, more expansive than what we discussed 2 weeks ago for 30 or 40 minutes. And I'm assuming it's going to be a discussion again, a pretty lengthy discussion on this agenda. And that's why I'm especially uncomfortable adding things to the agenda. It doesn't allow the city commissioners to take time. I know you responded or gave me a call Sunday morning to tell me you were going to add it to the agenda. Not really a lot of time for me to look into it or actually have staff look into it. So they might have been able to come to us tonight with a whole plan. One for not only something that could help Ponder Coffee with an outdoor dining waiving of the fee, but on a more thought out staff helping us get some an emotion so that we weren't struggling. So, but I don't want to take up any more of your time for that. I just wanted to comment. That's why I am very uncomfortable to adding things to the agenda, because I think we don't get a full purview of what the impacts were. And it could be, the solution could be found in a better way when we incorporate staff's recommendations. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Seeing no hands up, I guess we won't have any additions or deletions to the agenda tonight, Commissioner Gillis, which is probably good. So moving on, I guess we will open up our first public comment on agenda items. And looking at our participants in the meeting, I don't believe any members of the public are in our meeting currently. Manager Ridley, did we have any email comments?
No, Mayor, we did not receive any before today's meeting, and I just checked our comment at mountpleasant.org, and there's nothing in the queue at this point either for public comment.
Okay, so I will close the first public comment section on agenda items, and we will move to receipts of petitions and communications.
For this section of the agenda tonight, you have the report on pending items. You have the February minutes of the Mount Pleasant Planning Commission. You have the report of the annual report of industrial facilities tax abatements that Middle Michigan Development Corporation does for you annually. And I should point out that these tax abatements are throughout the entire city. And as the footnote on the report indicates, some of the tax abatements have actually expired, but we're still continue to report on them until their personal property has been depreciated. So there's some on there that are no longer getting tax abatements, but they did at one point in time. The next item on your petitions and communications is both the year-end 2019 report from the LDFA, as well as the first quarter, which both Jim and Aaron referred to in their presentation. And then lastly, you have the communication from the Planning Commission recommending approval of the proposed 2021 to 2026 capital improvement plan.
Next on to the consent calendar. Are there any items on the agenda that need to be removed from the consent calendar tonight? All right, seeing no hands, Manager Ridley, would you like to start us off?
Yes, we're recommending for the consent calendar that you consider approval of the minutes of your regular meeting of May 10th. We have two bids for you this evening. The first is for the replacement of some of our large valves on some of our water mains. This will replace some of those valves as a critical component of our distribution system. And we're recommending the low qualified bidder of Water Tap Inc. for $41,650, which was within the budgeted amount. The second bid is for the replacement of the mausoleum roof. And this project was in our capital improvement plan. And during the mandatory pre-bid meeting, we emphasized the requirement of wanting a new roof with a 20-year warranty, which is what was in the bid specs. We ended up receiving 3 bids. 2 of them did not meet the bid requirements in that they did not submit the required bid bond. The low bidder in their base bid did not guarantee the 20-year warranty, but in their alternate bid, in which they said they would include the replacement of the roof understructure, they guaranteed the 20-year warranty under that bid. So we're recommending the bid award of the alternate bid from IRT Commercial Services for a not to exceed cost of $27,425 and the appropriate budget amendment. We also have a traffic control order for your consideration this evening. And this control order has been in place in a temporary period for 90 days. And it's a no parking here to corner on Kinney Street. And this is due to a traffic activator that's in that area. During those 90 days, no comments or concerns were received. So we're recommending you approve it as a final traffic control order. The next item is another resolution confirming the extension of due dates for the recreational marijuana applications. And you've done one of these previously, but we're asking you to approve another or confirm another extension because the original extension had those application materials due this week and on Monday. And obviously with the extension of the state of emergency and the stay-at-home order, those companies were not able to submit their materials. So what we did this time, instead of giving them a date certain, is we indicated that once the state of emergency or the stay-at-home orders are lifted enough that they can actually begin the work on submitting their applications, that we would provide them a communication giving them 21 days from that point in time for them to supply their materials. So the resolution that's been drafted by the city attorney confirms that administrative action that we give them 21 days after notification of the appropriate orders being lifted. And then the last item is approval of payrolls and warrants.
Commissioner Gillis.
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Commissioner Alsager.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion? Commissioner Toles.
I've got one question referring back to 9B, the Riverside Mausoleum roof replacement. I see Chris is not with us. I don't know if you could answer it or not, Nancy. I'm looking at the bid document. And it's covered in our 2 pages here. There's not a page number on the second one, but it's a memo dated May 18th, 2020 to Nancy Ridley from Chris Bundy. And it covers here, and it says in the second page, project successfully and provided full warranty as specified in accordance with the roofing system manufacturer. Now, what's that mean? That this contractor is warranting the material and the labor, or just the material?
Commissioner Tolis, Chris Bundy is on the call with us, so I would ask the mayor to recognize him, and if Carrie could unmute him, he could probably answer that question.
Thank you.
I recognize Mr. Bundy.
Good evening. Yes, he looks at, they warranty both the labor and materials. And they also follow up in yearly increments to check the roof to make sure that everything's working fine in the year period, as well as giving us advice on making sure we maintain the roof with debris, being free of debris and so forth. So it includes both.
Okay, the reason I was asking you that, Chris, was I'm looking back at the capital improvement plan, page 27 with City Hall, with the roof that we got here that's only 13 years old, that certain T shingles were used on that have been discontinued and they've gone bankrupt now, which was not that good. It was an inferior shingle back then, but was a cheap shingle. So actually we didn't have any say on that because the building's condoed, and the contractor, of course, are going to use the cheapest product they can use and then tell you, well, yeah, well, they're out of business now, so I'm not going to warranty anything. I got to replace your roof again. You're going to have to pay for the shingles and pay for the labor. That's why I'm asking you that question. I don't want to get back into that groove again and have this roof be affected just like it was on the city building right now. We need to put a good quality shingle on it, which I think we are at $27,000, and we're getting a 20-year warranty on it for the product and the labor. I'm glad that's happening. Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, we shall move to a vote, a roll call vote. Jeremy can start us off.
Yep. Commissioner Alsager,
Aye.
Commissioner Gillis,
Aye.
Commissioner Lalone,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Do we lose Amy?
I don't see her. I'll move on to Commissioner or Mayor Joseph.
Aye.
Do we want to wait a second for the Vice Mayor?
Give me a second.
There we go.
Welcome back, Amy.
Okay. Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is a public hearing on the 2020 2026 capital improvement plan. And Manager Ridley, did you have any opening comments before we open the public hearing?
No, the only thing I would indicate is that this is a required public hearing according to the city charter, and it was set back in April when you received the capital improvement plan. And after holding the public hearing tonight, we're recommending you don't take any action, that you just accept any comments, and your action would be at your next meeting.
Okay. Does not appear that we have any members of the public in our meeting right now. And I'm assuming we do not have any comments related to the capital improvement plan. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor. I just double checked and nothing has come in.
Okay. I will now close the public hearing on the 2021-2026 capital improvement plan. And next on our agenda is item number 11, which is the receipt of Local Development Finance Authority / Downtown Development Authority information and ability to provide grants to local businesses. And this was a legal memo that we received. Manager Ridley, would you like to just sort of summarize that document?
Yes, in your prior work session, you requested additional details on the capture rates for both of these districts in the current approved budgets. And we also provided information on the currently approved expenditures and contracts. As I previously mentioned, if you were to decide to change the capture rate for this year, the current year that we're in, it would require a budget amendment to cover the approved expenditures and contracts with existing fund balance dollars if we change the revenue side of the budget. And so it's appropriate to obtain input from each of those independent boards before making such a decision. Lastly, some of you mentioned during the discussion that you would consider a change in the capture rates if it would be able to free up funds to assist local businesses impacted by the pandemic by providing operational funds or grants. And as you mentioned, the information from the city attorney indicates that such relief would not be an appropriate use of public funds from either the tax captures or from the general fund dollars. So there is no action needed on this item tonight, but we put it on the agenda since you requested it. And if you wanted to have a chance to discuss it, and any appropriate action that you would take would likely be to direct the staff or attorney for additional information if you deem it necessary.
Commissioner Gillis?
Yes, thank you. I just want to bring attention to the amount of tax capture at 40% in the table that's on page 48. I don't know if anybody can do the split screen, but on that table for the tax capture of 40% of the smart zone, we give back to the LDFA $101,763, $101,763. To just break that down for our community members, just rounding off to the nearest thousand, 31,000 of that is City of Mount Pleasant's money, tax dollars that would come to us. 30,000 to the Mount Pleasant Public Schools. They're reimbursed by per pupil. Education tax, 10,000. Our RESD is 9,000. School taxes, 2,000. Isabella County operating, that's our county commissioners, our county monies, 13,000. We're giving to the LDFA. Commission on Aging is 1,700. Medical care facility, 1,400. County parks, $704. And IRIDE, 1,733. We capture these other entities' monies and turn around and give them back to the LDFA. I am very interested in not grabbing the money from these other entities. They are dealing with an economic repression or an economic downfall as well. And so all of these entities very well could use these extra dollars along with the city of Mount Pleasant and of course Isabella County. And as I've spoken several times for 5 years that I've been on the commission about the cost benefit of this tax capture on all of our buildings, I should say the few buildings that are in the smart zone. So I would like to make a motion to reduce the tax capture of the LDFA to 20% for this year. They do have enough in their other buckets of money to replace what we are now going to be taking back to the taxpayer coffers and the rest of the entities I just mentioned. So I am making a motion to reduce that tax capture to 20%. That would be half of what they are capturing now.
Okay,
And I will need a second if anybody is interested in that.
we have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Tolis, I see your finger up.
I will second that motion.
Okay. The motion is seconded. And I will open up for discussion. Commissioner Gillis, I see your hand up in the queue.
I appreciate you listening to this. I have studied these reports for 5 years. I have really believed that the taxpayers that are all contributing within our city proper all give to infrastructure and safety. And we are in a crisis ourselves. Our municipality will be seeing reduced revenue next year, maybe even into 2022. I believe that they can recommend transferring money from the different balances that they have to grab from. And I do, again, believe that all the entities that we are taking their tax dollars that would, I pay my library taxes, I pay my Commission on Aging taxes, it goes to their entities. Whereas the Smart Zone, 40% of that money does not reach those entities that we approved as taxpayers at the voting ballot. So I really believe that this would help, and it might create jobs. We're always worried about if money's going to create jobs. If we give them this, they're going to create jobs. And I haven't seen a lot of that either on the Smart Zone end. But with those monies, it could save a job at ICTC. It could save a job at the medical care facility. So I really do believe in this crisis, this would be well represented or well given to the entities that we are going to be giving back to, including ourselves. So thank you.
Commissioner Alsager? Mary, you're muted right now.
Thank you. I guess I'm confused at how changing that would help the others.
May I speak?
Sure.
Okay. When they capture 40% of the taxes, those numbers that are in our packet on page 48, that is the amount of money that would have been given to Commission on Aging. Commission on Aging would have gotten 2,000, 1,700. The county commission would have received, hold on, 13,287. The city of Mount Pleasant will have received, that's if we didn't allow any capture, would receive 31,000. Half of that would be 15,000. Each one of these entities would now get half of what we used to give LDFA in the Smart Zone. They have enough money to cover it in their other buckets of money for what they have already had planned. We may want to look into this for 2020, also reduce that tax capture. But for me, I am uncomfortable taking from other entities when our voters went to the ballot box and approved those millages, yet some entities, they capture it back. They don't give their money to the library. They don't give that taxes. They capture it back and they do with it within these finance authorities authority, if you would. So it was on. I don't know if you can bring up your packet, or if you have your packet in a hard copy form, Commissioner Alsager, but it is on page 48 in the table where it shows the 2020 capture. Excuse me, the 2019 capture. They capture it the year before, they spend it the year later, right? Because you can't capture taxes in 2019 if they haven't been paid till the end of the year, right?
Actually, that's not quite true, Commissioner Gillis. We do give them what is actually captured in 2020, but since we haven't done the tax bills yet, we only have estimates for 2020. So
Okay.
that's why we gave you the 2019 numbers, because those are actual numbers from last year, and we don't have the actual numbers from this year yet, but they would be spending $2020 based on the approved budget.
Okay. And so these numbers would be higher because the assessed value went up.
Not in all cases necessarily, because some of it's personal property, so some of it goes down. So we haven't calculated it to know whether it's higher or lower at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Recognize Commissioner Ronan.
Unmute.
Yeah, I'm puzzled. When I just think this is the exact wrong thing to do at this time. I don't know how else to explain it. I think it's just misguided. If you look at the number of jobs they created in the first quarter, it's 107. That's a huge number for the first quarter of this year. If you look at the amount of money they brought in, given the pittance that we're funding them with, each year they've more than tripled the amount of money they brought into the community. And the money we're capturing is from properties located in those areas that initially they were responsible for. So I think even if you just look at the amount of money that they brought in terms of funds for people, small businesses in the community that are hurt by the COVID, it's greater than what they got. So I mean, I think I have no idea. I'm puzzled. I'm flabbergasted. I would absolutely not support such a motion.
I see Commissioner Alsager's hand up.
Yeah, Lori, I'm just wondering how to look at this in a long-term fashion.
Okay.
Well, to give you an idea, we have been funding this finance authority for 4 decades to get property on those parcels. And I don't know if you've been to the Smart Zone recently. I'm sure you have because you bike.
Yeah.
So you know how many properties or what has gone up in the last 5 years? Zero properties. We have not had any new development at all there. So we have to look at finances authority to see if we're getting any benefit from all the money that we can continually contribute. Most of that money goes to salaries. $33,000 of it goes to MMDC. Jim McBride, make sure that you understand that this is not MMDC. Commissioner Ronan, that's not MMDC with the giving out of the economic relief funds. Okay, the LDFA is completely different. In the 107 jobs you just stated, that was not for the city of Mount Pleasant. I look at the city proper. If we're taking tax dollars from the city, I want to see jobs created within the city. And that ended up being five from Mitsuba. That's all the jobs that we had created from the amount of tax capture for last year in 2019. So you might be saying 107. Some of those aren't even in the city. Well, obviously, most of them, 102, are not even in the city. They're surrounding areas. So that does nothing for taxpayers. Why are we using taxpayer money to fund other areas for tax value, for tax to tax on parcels? That is not where I would want my city money to go, my taxpayer money, to help someone in Clare have a building. Not that I don't care about Clare, but our taxpayer money should help development in our parcels. and create jobs within the city proper. So I don't consider those 107 jobs that were created outside of the city of Mount Pleasant a good use of our city tax dollars. No one else, Gladwin doesn't have a tax finance authority for the CMURC or the Smart Zone. Claire doesn't have a tax authority for the Smart Zone, yet they get some benefit from our taxpayer dollars.
Commissioner Tullis, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I will be supporting this. And one reason I'll be supporting it is you have to look back at the last 10 years. We've put almost $1 million into this company, $1 million. And we're talking 5 jobs at the plant. They missed the cheese factory that was looking here to come into Mount Pleasant. It would have created 200 jobs that they didn't even find out about it till the ink was dried in the contract that went to St. John's, Michigan. I knew 4 realtors who were on this. This company wasn't even on it. They weren't even aware of it. And I'm saying you got to figure out, and we got to look at this contract when it comes back up. What are we getting for our dollar? We have a fiduciary duty to the taxpayers to spend this money wisely. What jobs are you creating? The first quarter they talked to one company, seriously, and created no jobs in the first quarter? And we're paying them yearly to do this? I mean, you got to seriously look at this.
Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, I think the problem is you're conflating 2 reports, Laurie. There's 5 jobs created in 2019. That's true. We didn't discuss why that was. For the first quarter of this year, they've created 107. And I know that because I called up to get those numbers earlier today because I was surprised by them. But even if you, so you're conflating 2 numbers. I think, I don't know what to say. We just disagree on this one.
Yeah. Did you ask where the 107 were at? Or is it at Misuba? Was that within the Smart Zone? Was it within the Smart Zone? I can't hear you.
I'm not certain. I didn't ask where the specific jobs went to be honest. I didn't ask.
That's a condition for me.
But it was in this
giving them
area. But it is in this
$100,000
area.
taxpayer dollars to create jobs other than in the city. Why should we be doing that? Why
We're just
should
gonna
taxpayer
disagree on
dollars?
this one. I think you're misunderstanding things.
Commissioner Ronan, Commissioner Gillis, let's try to not
Okay.
talk over each other.
Yeah. If you're going to throw out a number of 107, let's make sure it's within the city proper, because that's 2 different things. If they're capturing taxes
Mr.
from the
Gillis?
city of Mount Pleasant, that's 2 different things.
Let's take a pause. I have a question for the manager, Ridley. When you look at that capture and it says 40%, that is 40% of new tax revenue generated. Is that correct? Or because it's not 40% of what they pay in taxes, right?
That's correct. It's 40% of the growth in the tax revenue.
Since 2000.
Marion, that's not true in this case. Can you answer that question?
Yes, it is since 2000. The value before that was in the TIFA district.
So on this report, what it's showing you in 2019 is the taxable value was 11.5 million and the amount we were capturing on was 5.6 million. So the other amount was 100% to those taxing jurisdictions.
So almost half.
Commissioner Gillis, you haven't been recognized.
Oh, sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
Commissioner Gillis.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Thank you. So the total taxable value was 11,500,000. And from the growth from 2000 has only been increased about 6,000, or excuse me, 6 million. Since 2000, since they've been capturing it, we've only increased the value about 6 million. More than about half. 50%. Is that right?
That is correct. And then the taxes that are captured are 40% of the taxes on just that $6 million.
Mayor, if I could add, this district is kind of unique in that with American Mitsuba out there with a large amount of personal property, that personal property has actually decreased. So it's kind of hard to measure was there an increase or not overall when you look at it in totality with the personal property decreasing and going off the roll due to the not abatements, the state making those things exempt.
Thank you, Mary Ann. I will not be supporting this motion. I think this is sort of an inappropriate time to be even talking about it. I think we, I wasn't prepared to talk about reducing the LDFA capture today. And I think that if we were going to consider something like this, we should have more thought and more research into it from staff and see the potential impacts. That's in general. I personally think that the LDFA has been beneficial to our community and would have to be just not convinced that this is the right move at this time. But Commissioner Elsager?
I think I'm leaning the way that you are, Will, but I think partly it's from still lack of understanding.
It is certainly something that we can always bring back later. I think the LDFA and the CMU Smart Zone is always a constant topic of conversation mostly because they come and make reports to us and we have contracts with them. And so it's not something that is going away anytime soon. So there's definitely more time for thought and consideration. Commissioner Tullis, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I would like to call the question because I can see which way this is headed. So let's just call the question and get it over with.
Okay. Not everyone has had a chance to speak necessarily. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue who has not spoken already? Okay. See one nods. I guess we can move to a vote then. And Jeremy, would you like to conduct our roll call vote on the motion?
Sure. Commissioner Tullis,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
No.
Commissioner Lalone,
No.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Alsager,
No.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
No.
Mayor Joseph.
No.
That motion fails 2 to 5.
Is there any more discussion of the receipt of local development finance authority / downtown development authority? Seeing no hands, I think we'll move on. Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, one of the things we had discussed, and I apologize for extending the meeting, but it is my lack of knowledge on this one. It seems like there's $181,000, and then there's two things that are captured by the city, right? Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding that? So that there's some funds that are captured by the city. Is it also true that we just have no control over those funds that are captured by the city? Or am I misreading it?
I'm not seeing Commissioner Ronan where you get the $181,000 from.
I was looking at that. Let me pull to the graph. I apologize. I should have been there. Oh, here it is. Under capture, give me a second. Mission DD, it's the DDA. It says 2019 tax capture, 28% non-school tax. City of Mount Pleasant, 181.
I see where you're at now. Again, those are last year's numbers that we gave you for reference, but you've already approved budgets for both the Mission Picker DDA and for the LDFA that allows some of those taxes that are paid on the increased value to be captured by those two independent authorities. And those authorities have recommended budgets to the City Commission, which were approved in December. So based on those approved budgets, those entities have gone out and signed contracts and made commitments for the approved expenditures for 2020.
Thank you. That clarifies it. Thank you very much.
Seeing no other hands for discussion, I think we will move on to item number 12, which is to consider a resolution confirming administrative actions regarding recreational, or no, I'm sorry. We already approved that. Item number 13, which is to consider a resolution temporarily permitting outdoor business activities. And I will hand this over to Manager Ridley to introduce this topic for discussion.
Yes, as restrictions are being lifted in the state and more industries are being allowed to open, we are seeing more instances where limitations are being placed on those businesses, quite frequently on occupancy levels and how they can conduct their business. And many of our staff have also been reviewing the recommended best practices that are recommended for each of those various industries as they're being allowed to open up. So in Mount Pleasant or in mid-Michigan, we are limited in which of our industries have been able to open, but in order to be out front of it so that it's so that our businesses can plan when those restrictions are lifted, we started looking at what kinds of things we might be able to do to help those businesses implement some of those recommended best practices or those restrictions that we've seen put in place in other areas. So the resolution that we've put in your packet was reviewed by the city attorney. And basically, it would allow businesses to temporarily use outdoor space and get those approvals on an expedited basis. So if a business wants to do their usual activity and they want to do some of it outside, in some instances that would be on public space. It may be on our public sidewalks or in our public parking spaces. Or in other cases, it may be in private space because they may have their own parking lots or their own green space. But in either case, we would like to be able to work with those businesses at the staff level to more expeditiously approve those temporary uses of that outdoor space so that they could hopefully have additional occupancy available to them and or be able to conduct their business safely with social distancing and so forth. So this resolution would delegate some of that authority to approve those temporary uses of the public outdoor spaces and make sure that the privately held spaces are done in compliance to keep it safe and doesn't interfere with fire and stormwater and those kinds of things. The other thing, and also would allow the public safety director to approve temporary outdoor space for bars and restaurants that serve alcohol subject to LCC guidelines. The other thing the resolution does is, as Commissioner Gillis mentioned earlier, it would reconfirm the action that you took at the last meeting about waiving the fees for the use of outdoor dining in the downtown area. But then it would take it a step further and would also waive the fee for outdoor merchandising, which is currently only a $50 fee. And it would also waive the fee for a tent if the tent is being used for the same business activity, which is currently a $100 fee. So we're recommending that you approve this resolution as presented so that our businesses can begin to plan how they might be able to use that outdoor space as they are able to do so as the restrictions are lifted at the state level. And I should point out that the temporary approval would only be in place until September 30th, at which time it could be reevaluated at that time. So we recommend you approve the resolution as presented and as reviewed by the city attorney.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
First, I'd like to say that, I think Nancy and the staff did a great job thinking this through, looking at the businesses in our area. We are about supporting all businesses within the city limits of Mount Pleasant and how we need to encourage their ability to profit once we are allowed to open, because there are going to be a lot of restrictions placed on businesses, and I appreciate that. I would like to move to approve the resolution temporarily permitting outdoor business activities as presented.
Commissioner Elsager.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second, and I will open up the floor for discussion. And I just wanted to echo really the comments by Vice Mayor Perschbacher that I think this is a way for us to help our businesses be able to thrive in what is really a treacherous economic situation. Unfortunately, the city is limited in the tools that it really can to help our businesses. We don't have the power to do grants and loans like the state and federal governments do. And so it's, I think, little things that we can do to sort of help them expand their operations and while being safe in a time of a pandemic. And so this is a way that we can do that, support our local businesses. And I will be supporting this motion. I'd like to thank Nancy and the rest of the staff for coming forward with this. And I just think it shows our commitment to our community. And just thank you. Next, I will recognize Commissioner Gillis.
Yes. Clarification that we are going to allow them to use public space, be it a tent in a parking lot would be an example of them setting up a tent in, like, say, Jockey Alley, and they can keep it there until September 30th?
No, the tents would more likely be done in the private parking lots or on private green space. I don't necessarily envision us allowing tents in our public parking lots at this point in time, because it would have to be adjacent to the business.
Okay. But so there is some intent on letting them use businesses use public parking lots.
Public parking spaces they would be able to use in front of their business.
Okay. So not necessarily Jockey Alley.
I see Jacob's dialed into the phone. He's done a lot of the work on this. Jacob, can you help clarify? Make sure I'm
Absolutely. The intent in our tent permit process is for tents that are located on private property. So the intent in waiving the fee on those tents is to provide for their use on private property at no charge over the course of this summer for those businesses that need to expand their activities outside.
On private property?
Correct.
Okay, so where does the public space come in?
The primary aspect of this policy that would deal with public space, it'd be through our outdoor dining license policy, in which you've already taken some action on at a previous meeting, and the outdoor merchandise policy, which has to do with displaying merchandise on the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. One more other question. In the policy, the enumeration, one of the statements says all activities permitted under this resolution must occur in accordance with all federal, state, and local regulations and guidelines. My question is, does that include governor's executive orders about 6-foot distancing and masks? How is that going to be implemented if they're using outdoor spaces and their clients or their customers are not following the guidelines or the executive orders?
I think Nancy or Paul may be able to answer the enforcement piece better than me, but that is the intention, is to make it clear that having a Lake of the Ozarks style party in a parking lot would not be permitted under this temporary allowance.
And what we've encountered, as you and I have talked about, Commissioner Gillis, is enforcing some of those executive orders sometimes can be difficult to do. But quite honestly, I think under this, we might have more power for enforcement because we could revoke the use of the temporary outdoor space maybe more easily than we could implement some of the executive orders. So if a business was being egregious in violating many of those orders, I would think we would have an additional tool that we might be able to talk with them about to get them to more voluntarily comply with those orders.
I'm in fear of just seeing a bar establishment setting up tables, and not applying social distancing or not enforcing people to wear masks, and obviously creating more of a potential of an uptick in Isabella County. And so, but I do have, I know we're, Director Lauria, would you have anything that I could be telling people that are asking me when they go into places of business that aren't implementing the face mask policy or initiative that the governor stated? Because I know you guys can't go, you can't be everywhere and you can't enforce it, but is there any avenues where if customers are feeling unsafe or somewhere that they could express or have something done about so many people not doing these social distancing and masks to allow the COVID to reduce in numbers?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the question, and it's not an easy answer to get. I don't have an easy answer to give you. As Nancy said, the governor's order is difficult to enforce, and there's been some challenges to it. I do like the idea that we do have an extra tool above or that we hold on to, which is revoking the special license. But in stores like, say, a local grocery store where people are not using their masks, really what we have relied on is for store management to say, look, you either have to wear a mask or you're not welcomed here, so to speak. And if they're not willing to put on a mask or have a medical condition that allows them not to wear a mask, it's up to them to ask them to leave. And then if they don't leave, we get into a different type of situation of trespassing. Now, the problem is that when people say, oh, I have a medical condition, again, there's nothing in those orders that says they have to produce it to show to the store management. It's really difficult to enforce. So I was in a store this weekend where somebody didn't have one on, and someone mentioned it to them, and the person replied, oh, I have a medical condition. And the store employee said, okay. And I mean, that was the extent of the investigation. You know, it's difficult. It's not an easy answer.
Thank you, Director.
Commissioner Altiger?
I just have a question for Nancy and staff about if there has been any discussion about road closures in the downtown area, either weekends or Thursday nights or something like that, so that the walkability would be enhanced along with the shopping.
Yes, we have had that discussion. As a matter of fact, we spoke about it with some of the downtown merchants last week at the monthly merchant meeting. And there was some interest in trying to do a road closure for part of the downtown. But before we moved forward with that, we wanted to get input from all of the downtown businesses and property owners. So we sent out a survey, and the results were being compiled today. And there was kind of a mixed reaction to it. So we're still evaluating whether we think that is a good thing to move forward with and how we might be able to do that to make sure we're appropriately considering all of the downtown business owners. So no decision has been made yet on whether any roads will be temporarily closed down or not yet.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Tolis?
Just a couple quick comments. I don't know how this is going to affect and help business owners right now. You still have the governor's order to go by. And I was going to ask Chief Loria the same question that Commissioner Gillis asked him. How would you enforce this? Houghton Lake just opened up this weekend, and some of those bars were packed wall to wall. So now you're going to tell the chief, well, you're going to have to go over here and enforce this and break this up. It just doesn't make any sense. And then they had another popular restaurant on a corner that opened for breakfast that always had 20, 30 cars in there. It was open for business and there was nobody there because they were afraid to go in there. And who knows when the governor's going to lift this order? Nobody knows. And I think we're just getting way too deep in this, you know. And for everybody's information, the casino is opening up Friday. For people that don't know that, I've seen a memo. It's open up on Friday the 29th for Diamond Club, and it's open to the public on 6/1 at 8 a.m. And that's opening back up. So I guess they don't care what the governor wants. So I just think we're diving in this too deep. I don't think this is going to help anything. Even Traverse City's talked about shutting the main streets, shutting Front Street down and let the businesses go out into the street. I mean, you're going to have the governor open this stuff up to start this whole process. And that's not happening right now. So we're talking about something where our hands are tied right now.
Right.
Is my feeling on it.
I agree with you, Commissioner Tolis. We don't know when it's going to happen, but the last couple restrictions that have been lifted have been done with very short notice to those businesses. So for instance, retail businesses can be open now, but they have to make appointments for individuals to come in. And they had about a week's notice to be able to figure out how to do that. And so we were trying to get ahead to say when the governor does allow for it, here's what we'll help you with in the city so that some of those businesses can start thinking about it and be poised to be able to take advantage of it when the governor does lift the restrictions. But you're right, and until that's done at the government level, there's nothing that the businesses can do in many of these industries.
I understand that, manager, really, but that's why we waive the dining fee for patios. And you would think with a limited amount of increase in cases we have here in Isabella County, that the governor would waive that and allow restaurants to serve outside. It only makes sense. And they can distance, they can do everything else to meet it, but it's not happening.
I think Commissioner Tolis's comments about the frustration, you know, with this whole ordeal is something that everybody feels. It's an inconvenience for everybody, and there's a lot of businesses that are hurting. And it's no matter, you know, how you feel about some of our political leaders, the situation is something nobody asked for, and it's sacrifices that everybody's being made to endure. So I definitely feel those comments, but I do feel that this is a proactive approach. And when our businesses are able to open up, even if it's partial capacity or in some partial manner, they'll have some more flexibility. And so I think that this is a good step, even if it doesn't, it could be a month, could be really, who knows when these businesses will be able to take advantage of this. So. Looks like we don't have any more hands up for discussion, so I guess we can move for a vote.
All right. Commissioner Lalone,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
What?
Commissioner Alsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next on our agenda is item number 14, which is to consider a resolution in support of amending fees for the summer 2020 peak program. And I will let Manager Ridley start us off.
Again, this is a situation where we're trying to get ahead a little bit because the staff has been looking at ways to see if there will be an opportunity for us to safely provide some limited peak services yet this summer. And some of the initial planning that the staff did led us to believe that we thought we might be able to implement a program beginning June 22nd and carry through the month of July. And during that research, the staff also identified a state grant that was available that would provide financial assistance to these daycare type settings. And one of the requirements of the grant is that we would be required to reduce our fees by at least 10% when we offer the program. So the resolution before you tonight recommends a reduction that is actually slightly greater than the 10%, as what we attempted to do was try to get our weekly fee rate to be similar to what I would call our bundled 6-week rate, which is how we typically offer the 6-week program for peak in the summer. And our calculations would indicate that these recommended reduced fees, plus the state grant that we would be eligible for, plus the previously received tribal 2% funds, would be enough to cover the full cost of the summer program without using any taxpayer dollars. The Parks and Recreation Commission discussed this concept last week and was supportive of it, although they did not take specific action as it wasn't on their published agenda, but they did indicate support for it. Unfortunately, since the time that we put the plans together, the guidelines that are issued by the CDC for these types of programs have changed. And we are less confident that at this point in time, we can offer a safe program that meets all of those guidelines. But we are continuing to evaluate it and see if there are things we can do to safely offer this program. So we're still recommending that you consider this resolution this evening as presented. So that way we could have fees in place if we find a way to safely offer the program for students to be able to use this summer. So we recommend you approve it as presented, and it would just be a reduction in fees for this summer only based on the grant availability.
Commissioner Alsager?
There we go. I move to approve the resolution approving a temporary reduction in weekly summer 2020 peak fees as presented.
Commissioner Ronan?
I'd second the motion Commissioner Alsager just made.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Ronan, I see your hand up in the queue. Are you, would you like to make some comments? No? Seeing no discussion, I would just echo the comments of Manager Ridley that this is trying to get ahead of the curve. And although we might not be able to do this, I think it's good to have it in place just in case. And I would thank Manager Ridley and Mr. Longoria for their work on this. We can move for a vote.
Commissioner Ronan,
You need to unmute.
yes. Okay. Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Commissioner Lalone,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Alsager,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Next on our agenda is announcements on city-related issues and new business, and I will give the floor to Manager Ridley.
Thank you, Mayor. As I indicated, I wanted to give you a update on some of our COVID-related activity that we've been working on. As you know, since the beginning, we've been providing the fire, police, wastewater, water, and airport services because they've fallen into the critical service category since day one, as well as trash collection, but not curbside pickup. Based on the lifted restrictions that have occurred over the last month, we've also increased our parks and street staffing back to pretty much full-time on-premise work. And we've increased our staffing for construction activities in building safety and engineering. And we've also increased our on-premise staffing for code enforcement. And in all of our other areas, we continue to evaluate the service levels on a weekly basis based on the ever-changing executive orders. And we're doing as much work as we can be doing remotely. As you know, last week, we implemented the special one-time curbside pickup of recycling. And it was much more successful than any of us envisioned that it would be as far as the amount of tonnage that was picked up. I think the numbers I saw were we were just shy of 55 tons of recycling that was picked up by Republic Services. And even though it was picked up with a garbage truck, it was all transported over to the Kent County Material Recycling Facility. And they have a single stream process where the materials are taken into the facility and either automatically or manually sorted at the facility, which is different than the way our facility works here in town. So we felt that it was a very successful program, and hopefully people were able to find their garages and sheds before the holiday weekend by getting rid of so much of that recycling. As more industries continue or are allowed to open, I have to be honest with you, it's becoming more and more difficult not to have more of our business type offices open, but we still are trying to make sure we comply with the executive orders and try to keep our office building closed to the extent possible. Based on the current executive order, which is scheduled to expire on June 12th, our current plan would be that we would have more of the office staff on premises starting June 15th, but that first week would be on an appointment only basis, and we would hope to be back to normal operations for public being able to access the building the week of June 22nd. But again, that's all dependent on future executive orders. And we would expect that all of our visitors would wear masks when they come into the public buildings. We continue updating and working on our state required response plan that we're required to have. And each time we think we have it done, either a new CDC guideline comes out or a new executive order comes out. So we find that we are constantly updating it. But our goal all along has been to make sure that the things that we put in place help keep our community safe and help keep our employees safe to do our part in helping to slow the spread. And I'm happy to report that thus far, we have not had any of our city employees test positive for COVID at this point in time. And I knock on wood as I say that, because I know that could change at any moment. But we do continue to remind our employees that if they're not feeling well, they should not come to work. The staff has really done an incredible job trying to keep up with all of this. There's a group of us that meet on a daily basis to talk about what's happened with the executive orders or what's happening with staffing and service levels to make sure we're responding as quickly as we can. And that group has been invaluable, and the staff flexibility has been invaluable. In addition, we have various city staff who are meeting with other members from around the county from an emergency operations standpoint to coordinate things within the county. And I have virtual meetings on a fairly regular basis with both the county administrator and the Union Township manager. Ending a little bit more on a positive note, I'm happy to report that we believe that, or the staff has found a way where we believe we can offer the farmers market starting on its usual Thursday opening date of June 4th. And the shopping experience will be quite different than what it's been in the past in order to meet all of the CDC guidelines and the state requirements. And we'll be doing a lot of public outreach on it, but a couple examples is we'll expect that people will have to register for shopping times. We'll expect mask wearing other than those who aren't medically able to do that. We'll have a curbside pickup option, and it will only be essential food items that will be available at the market. But we are very excited that we should be able to open as planned next Thursday. So lastly, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, we continue to see patients levels decreasing while staff levels are increasing. And so I think it's still important for all of us to remember, not only those of us leaders in the community, but throughout the entire community, that we don't know people's individual stories and what they've had to deal with. So the more compassionate and kind we can be to each other, the better our community will be if we continue to work through this journey. So that concludes my update, unless anyone has any questions.
Is there any questions for Manager Ridley? Vice Mayor Perschbacher, I see your hand up.
Well, I have one question, and then I have something I'd like to report. Is there, Nancy, are there any, are we increasing temporary seasonal staff? Are we going to start hiring them so that we can take care of the maintenance, the streets, mowing, such as that? There's a lot of, because we haven't been doing it, I'd like to see us get right back into that.
We have held off on, we have tried to hold off on bringing additional staff onto the payroll system and having to go through all the training processes. But just recently, we approved the hiring of some seasonal staff in our Parks Department. Typically, we hire 25 seasonals in the Parks Department. And we've been having 3 of our full-time staff try to keep up with things. So this week, we approved for 4 seasonals to be brought on full-time to be able to help out with that. And we're also looking at bringing on an additional seasonal in our wastewater treatment plant, primarily because we have a vacancy right now. So we are starting to look at expanding that workforce, but it is all driven by the departmental needs and what we can provide of those services. And so we are looking at it in a cautious and slow process to make sure that we're bringing the right people on at the right times.
Okay. Good. The one thing that I wanted to mention is that because the executive order is now allowing testing, not only for those who have mild symptoms, but also those who leave their house to go to work, you can be tested if that is something that you want to do. You no longer need a doctor's note saying that you can be tested. And I think that that's very important that people understand that, because then the more people that are tested, the better idea we have of where we are with COVID and what the numbers truly are. I'd also like to encourage people to be kind to each other. If you choose not to wear a mask, I understand that, but there are many of us that choose to wear a mask, and, you know, being rude to people because they choose to wear a mask is just, it's just not good policy. And I prefer people just realize that everyone has the choice of how they handle their life, and we don't have the choice to tell them that they're wrong. So let's just be kind to each other.
Commissioner Alsager?
My comment tonight is a concern I heard from a city resident who was having trouble getting either city bags or city tags with her grocery delivery. So she was a little frustrated about that. So I just mentioned, I know I was able to get some at one of our local grocery stores. So they are still available.
Yes, they are available at Meyer, Rick's, and Green Tree. But if individuals are having difficulties, if they contact our utility billing department, we can help them work through that if need be as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gillis?
Yes, well, that's great news about the farmer's market. That's the best news I've heard all day. So thank you for that. Awesome job on the recycling. I saw a lot of our neighbors and myself, we were overloaded here with recyclables. So that was a great move by you, Nancy, to establish that with the county, or however you manage that with Mrs. McAvoy. I appreciate you working on that to help the load that we were accumulating, and reiterating that all did go to a material recycling facility in Kent County, because I know there's been some rumors that it wasn't making it there. Thirdly, I would like to ask anyone that still hasn't filled out the census to please fill out the census. It is so important to our community. It is so important to our representation in the federal government, our schools, how much money we get all the way across the board, approximately $1,500 per citizen, that if you don't fill out your census and you don't include your family, you will receive, we will see a reduction in services. We have to stay above that 25,000 population number. So please, we are doing really good. I think the last number I saw was like 58% approximately of people responding. For all of my fellow city commissioners, please encourage everyone that you come into contact with, just ask them. I know places I've gone have asked me if I filled out the census, and I can, say happily, yes, I have. And even Pizzanello's Pizzas, I was delivered census napkins, which were really cool, because my daughter was like, did you know that they're putting napkins? I'm like, yeah, that's so cool. So I'm really glad that you've done that outreach to different areas to keep on pushing that message. And I would really like to see some kind of relief across the board for all of our taxpayers. And I don't know what form we could talk about, because I know we've talked about reducing millages, and I don't really think that's the proper mechanism. But something as simple as when we come back on board, maybe not applying the recycling fee. I know that's a small fee on people's waters, but that is something that we could do across the board instead of selecting certain aspects of our community, certain pockets of our community, and that might help everyone to encourage recycling. I use water to recycle, so I use a lot of extra water just to save Mother Earth, and hopefully use some efforts to use those commodities in production of new items. So but I would really like to see something that can be applied to all of us, rather than select areas of our community. If there's some fashion that we could have some kind of relief for all of us. So I also want to thank everyone that went out to pay their respects to our heroes, and our community members that are all working together to help one another. And again, The mask you wear today may save a life tomorrow. So please consider that when you are in our community, that your mask may save a life tomorrow. And it's a small ask at this point of all of us. Just think, I, in my realm of my people I know, I've had 2 people that I know personally. One is a neighbor, one was a friend's mother, who both died of COVID. So, and that is in our community, or Isabella County, I should say. One was a Mount Pleasant resident, one was Isabella County. So it is here, and it is striking people we know. And the simple act of social distancing and wearing a mask will save a life. So please consider this small act of heroism and community love, so that you're showing that you actually are very considerate, and it's a small ask for you to wear a mask. And down in our local downtown, Outreach has a tree that they are putting masks on. If you're in the need of a mask, you don't have access to a mask, you can get a mask downtown and in other areas. So, and we may be able to provide that something on our community website, on the Mount Pleasant website, of places that if you're in need of masks, that you may be able to acquire one. And of course, if you are talented in the sewing machine, there is things out on YouTube to show you how. So I appreciate everybody's help, and everyone stay healthy, and thank you for what you're doing.
Manager Ridley?
Yes, just a couple of follow-up things, Mayor. Speaking of masks, the Mount Pleasant Area Community Foundation is partnering with some other organizations this Thursday to give away free masks at the Kalhavi Event Center. It will be a drive-through where you can pick up free masks, and they will be giving away thousands of masks that day if anybody in the community needs one. And again, that's this Thursday from 4 to 6. And then I would remind the commission that we did waive the curbside recycling fees for April, May, and June for our taxpayers. And you also approved additional time for summer tax bills to be paid. So that will give some relief to some of our residents. And then I guess the last thing I just wanted to comment on based on some of the comments is I appreciate your positive feedback about some of the programs we've done. But I just want to make it clear that even though I may be the spokesperson or the voice box of those, you really need to know that it's the staff that has been doing all of that research and lining up all of those things. And they have really stepped up and done a great job. So I appreciate your feedback, but it really needs to be at the staff level where they've done all of that work for us. So I'd like to publicly thank them for doing that.
Commissioner Toles?
Couple quick comments. I have to agree with Commissioner Gillis and Commissioner Parshbacher about masks. There should be no people hassling other citizens about wearing masks. And as far as that goes, most businesses now can refuse you service. As Chief Floria said, well, they can say, I've got a medical excuse and then I can't do it. Basically, they can refuse you service to enter because it's their company policy, you must wear a mask. Same with Tractor Supply today. I saw a couple people that didn't have masks, got to the door, and it says, the lady said, do you have a mask? No, well, it's our store policy, you have to have one, here's a mask. Well, the one lady says, no, I refuse to wear the mask. So they said, we have to refuse you service. And they can do that. You know, they can just ask you to leave. You know, it's just a safety factor. I'd like to also apologize to the commissioners for maybe over voicing my opinion on business matters in town here, because I really take it seriously. I want to try to help the businesses with everything I can do. And right now we're sitting at 5 restaurants in town here that will not reopen, that are out of business right now. And this is going to keep growing. I'm just sorry to say that, but it's going to happen. We have to get things open in a safe manner. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to probably reiterate a couple things that have already been mentioned, but I'll be brief. And I guess that's the luxury of being the last one to speak, but I just wanted to remind people that there is testing available through at Rite Aid and at Walmart, and you can do that by appointment. You have to sign up for it. And then I'd just like to thank thank Manager Ridley and Public Safety Director Gloria and the staff there for helping out the city of Midland and the surrounding area during their flooding crisis last week by sending some I think they sent some fire trucks and some people over there. And then also United Way is taking donations of PPE, cleaning supplies, non-perishable food, water and drinks, personal care items, and household goods for those affected by the flood. And they're doing that every day, 9 to 4, starting tomorrow. And they can be dropped off at Midland High School, Bullet Creek High School, Meridian Elementary, Coleman High School, Sanford Senior Center, West Midland Family Center, North Midland Family Center, and Gladwin Downtown behind Forge Fitness. Just those are our neighbors, and you know, it's good to be helpful the committee or the community. And I'm sure we all know people who live over there and have been affected by the flood. And again, just thank staff for the successful recycling program, and remind everybody to stay safe, wear your mask, and together get this. Commissioner Gillis, I see your hand up.
Thank you. One last comment. I am so glad the free brush pickup is doing so well that 150 people signed up in one day. I am ecstatic I'm not ecstatic there was such a need. I'm just ecstatic that our community members are getting this opportunity to get rid of their brush. In 2016, this was a brainchild of mine, and with the help of former Mayor Jim Holton, we were able to get support from the City Commission and started that in 2017. So on a really good note, that has been a great thing that has actually served our community members. So thank you, staff, for making that happen.
And with that, I will open up public comment on agenda and non-agenda items to the public. And it does appear that we have no members of the public on our Zoom meeting. And Manager Ridley, do we have any emailed comments?
No, Mayor, I just double checked again and nothing else has come in.
Okay. Then I think we'll take a short recess, maybe 5 minutes, and we will reconvene for a work session discussing the capital improvement plan.
So Lori, are you finally getting to have some dinner?
We're just having a little bit of a snack.
Yeah, I got home from golf and Dave had a salad made for me and the rest was easy to prepare. So that was nice.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, those aren't as easy like salads or here, honey, there's leftovers for you. Yeah, that's when you have two kids home, 4 of us.
For sure.
At least for another couple weeks. So are we on camera right now? Or did they take us off?
Yeah, sure.
I think we're on camera.
Okay. Good to know. Well, I'm going to go off camera.
Looks like we have everybody back that I can tell. All right. I think, are we ready to reconvene? All right. We will reconvene here now for our work session on the 2021-2026 capital improvement plan. And we obtained some data and some information from staff about priority of projects that can be delayed, those that can't be delayed, and those that potentially could be delayed with some possible ramifications. And then we should probably go over those and if there's any follow-up questions from staff or, I mean, from commissioners, we can go over those. Manager Ridley, do you have any initial comments for us? Hey, Nancy, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I think you hit the high points, Mayor. We're just ready to answer any questions you may have on how we categorize those projects. And we're looking for some general direction on your willingness to support those so that we know how to draft the resolution for your next meeting.
Okay. Are there any concerns or questions, comments from the commission? Commissioner Alsager.
Well, just as I looked through all of the proposals and ideas, it was making me think that the concept of a staycation where you're staying closer to home instead of traveling elsewhere, that we really need to do everything we can to keep our parks open and accessible. And I know that would mean increasing staff, but perhaps we're just about to the point to open restrooms and make them so families can actually enjoy the parks for longer. That's my comment.
Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, I thought we had I don't want to say consensus, but sort of an understanding that perhaps alleyway renovation might be one of the things that it looks like it can be delayed. And I guess I'd still think that that could probably be delayed if it's, I don't know how you want to proceed. Should we just discuss everything under that can be delayed, or what's the strategy we're using?
I guess I to that point, I think I think we should look at the document here submitted by staff. And first, I think we should look at the projects that can be delayed with possible ramifications, and looking at those, just those first initially, and see if are there projects that we feel strongly in that group that should or should not be delayed. So it looks like Commissioner Gillis, you have your hand up.
Yes. Can you hear me? I obviously think the ones at the bottom of the screen, the table that says cannot be delayed, obviously should not be delayed. But the top category that can be delayed, out of the 20 different things that are listed there, with a postponement of $2,549,000 being expended for these improvements. We had a summary of some of the shared revenues, and I think it was $3 billion short. They expect this year's everything, cumulative taxes, gas taxes and the such, that we will be experiencing next year. Is that right, Nance or Miss Ridley, that it was $3 billion?
That's the state's projected shortfall for this year that they expect to have.
Okay.
At the level.
Okay. So in that top category of things that can be delayed, I would have no problem delaying anything that is from the capital improvement budget or special assessment, because I don't think now is the time to impose a special assessment on community members for alley reconstruction or some of the other things that we have here. I think the other one was pedestrian street lighting. So, but the ones that are being paid for through the TIFA and the Central Business District, those monies have already been allocated. So I feel that if they feel comfortable with still going through with those expenditures, I would, because that's not even our budget. That's another bucket of money, the TIFA, the downtown TIFA's money, that they'll be doing those parking lots out of. So out of that top category that can be delayed, I would be okay with the TIFA's expenditures if they're okay with that. And I would also be okay with the local streets reconstruct. But as far as the capital improvements, the coming out of the CI budget, I would rather wait to try to save on not save. This is just postponing the $2,549,000 that are on the list that can be delayed. I would like to at least hold on to a little bit of a bank of about $2 million just to see what we're going to be dealing with next year. So that would be my input. The other ones that say with possible ramifications, the audio and video for City Hall under the $80,000 for capital improvement. Under that listing, I would also be feel comfortable with allowing that to be delayed 1 year. But the other ones, the HVAC and the resurfacing reconstructions on Chippewa University with local street funds, I would still be okay with those. And of course, the storm sewer collection extensions. And then of course, none from for my opinion, none for the cannot be delayed portions. So there you have it.
Hey, Lori, can you just clarify for me? You said you would be okay with delaying the local street projects for Chippewa University and...
No. Anything from the local streets, I would be okay with moving forward. Any of the other from the top list that are just from the capital, the CI budget, the replacement, the carpet replacement at DPS, the apparatus bay door or floors, excuse me, the Canal Street park improvements. Of course, the alleyway renovations, like Commissioner Ronan suggested, the special assessments. I don't think now is the time to do a special assessment on anyone. So I wouldn't be in favor of anything that was partially funded by special assessment, anything from the capital improvement, but I would be okay with the TIFA and the CBDs, the Central Business District expenditures. That money's already in the TIFA, that they already have planned for that. And I'm assuming that they're feel comfortable with moving on with that. I'm not sure. And any of the local street reconstructs from the local street fund.
Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, I'm still not, is that a motion, Laurie, or I mean?
No, we can't make motions in a work session.
Oh, you can't. So how do we get, or is this just informational?
We all need to, well, we're trying to get through this list of what we're comfortable with and what we're not comfortable with. So
well, I'm comfortable with what Laurie said.
Thanks.
I don't know, whatever.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question for Nancy and Marianne. We got that information from the state, from their revenue summit or meeting. I think it was last week, and they sort of projecting the shortfalls in the budget that Commissioner Gillis was highlighting a little bit. And I was wondering if you could give a little more information about how that's going to impact our revenue sharing this year and next year. I know when I read it initially, I sort of thought doesn't look as bad as I thought. And then I've been told that it probably is worse than what I originally interpreted. So
let me start out and then have Marianne add to it. For this year, based on the projections the state has given us, we have some fairly good estimates that we can estimate this year's revenue based on the state projections. The unknown piece of it is because, like Commissioner Gillis mentioned, the state has a $3 billion shortfall. The state legislature and the state governor, they impact our statutory part of our revenue sharing and may reduce that further than what the current projections show. So there's some unknowns there. But this year we can fairly, based on the information the state's given us thus far, we have a pretty good estimate of our impact this year. Next year is more difficult because the state has only projected part of next year, and their fiscal year is different than ours. And so next year we have to make some guesses about the second half of our fiscal year, which we will do a better job of as we get into putting the budget together, because we'll have better information at that time. So with those general comments, I would turn it over to Mary Ann to maybe give some more details about that.
Yeah, the state in their publication that they sent out told what the difference between their new estimate for their 2021 fiscal year versus their 2020 fiscal year. And that was showing an $85,000 reduction, which that would have been very exciting if that would have been the overall reduction. But they didn't say what the reduction for their 2020 year is from the May estimating conference from what they did in February. So if you look at that, it's about a $228,000 reduction in our fiscal year 2020 for us. And then another 200 and some odd thousand in 2021, but that gets real soft as you're going out that far. Also, I would caution that at the revenue estimating conference in May, they didn't really have a lot of data because at that point they were looking at sales for the month of March only. Well, we know that April and May are going to be largely depressed for sales tax because most of the business, other than online activity, we're not open. So we're still could have more. And as Nancy said, the state has to balance their budget somehow. So we won't be immune to that being looked at for ways to balance the state's budget. So we sort of know it's still pretty murky, but not as murky as it was before the revenue conference, but still a lot to be concerned about. It's about a $2.9 million revenue item in our budget. So a large portion of it.
So that's why we indicated in our considerations that it probably is prudent to defer at this point in time until you have a better view of some of the revenues. So any of these things you are comfortable with deferring, it probably does get.
I guess I just have one follow-up question. Nancy, you said it's going to the impact to our statutory revenue sharing, and what items does that cover? Is that more focused on local streets or?
No, the revenue sharing has two components to it. There's the constitutional, which by constitution has to be so much of the sales tax is shared with the local units. And then there's a statutory portion to the state share revenue, which is set by the legislature and their appropriations in the budget. So constitutional depends on the economy. The economy's sales tax and income tax are down, constitutional is going to be down. Statutory depends on the economy and what's appropriated to us. So we're not talking about what happens to Act 51 because of the sharing of the gas tax coming to us too. Not only gas tax, but the sales tax on the gas sales that didn't happen too.
Okay. Thank you. That helps. Commissioner Gillis, I see your hand up.
Yes, just a reminder that these are not, these are just going to be deferred until we get a better handle on this. We were all hoping to open up in May, and that is come and gone. We're looking at June, but there's no guarantee that we're going to be opening back up in June. I would be much more comfortable playing it very safe and prudent. And if best case scenario, we're all open for business by the end of June, and they're hope, and that's all if people are willing to go out, right? Because you can open it up, but if people aren't willing to go out and start traveling, I mean, there might be a little bit more traveling, but there still be people hesitant to going to restaurants. So I think just saving a little bit for a rainy day, or at least delaying some of these projects, just in order to make sure that we good footing, that we are stable, that we can afford this. If things come our way and we get these monies, or it's not as bad as we think, we can put these back on for 2021. We can put some of these things that we may be putting off.
Commissioner Alsager? Mary, you're on mute. You're muted.
All right, thank you. I just appreciate the good hard work that's gone into the thought process here of what, the different categories are and how things will impact other things and what can really be delayed and what can't be. I don't see a need to make major changes.
Hey, Mary, can you just clarify what you mean by that? Because I guess when you say you don't want to make major changes, I'm not sure if you mean to what's in the capital improvement draft or what's in this memo that's in the work session.
Okay, I'm talking about the work session about the different categories of this can be delayed, this can be delayed with, with ramifications. And I trust the city staff to know when that changes to a different category of, we can't delay that anymore. So that's what I'm talking about.
All right.
Is that clear?
I think so, yeah.
So you're good with what the categories are right now, Mary? Yes, okay.
This document, not in the proposed plan.
Yes.
George, did you have a comment? I saw your hand over there for a second.
Not really. I was just more of the same. I agree with Mary's assessment and Lori's assessment. I think. Yeah.
Okay. I think the one thing that really sticks out to me is under the not under the general capital improvement projects, but under the wastewater improvements, and we see that the plant improvement / replacement, the $271,000 for that. It sounds like if we don't act on that next year, that we'll be looking at increased costs in the future. And it sounds like to me my inkling is that I think we should move ahead with that project, because I think it's probably makes more financial sense to be ahead of the ball on those, and we don't want to get to 2022 and say, gee, why do we have to spend all this money when, I think it'd be better to pace it out over a few years. Commissioner Ronan, I see your hand up.
I was talking about the first category of can be delayed. I'm not suggesting the wastewater stuff at all. I agree with you, Will. I'm not suggesting we delay that. Just this first category here, minus the resurfacing and the stuff covered by Tifa. And I think we can go ahead with those, just the other things, right, that we talked about.
I know Commissioner Gillis had listed the chamber audio and video for the $80,000. That comes from the capital improvement. And this is a point where I probably disagree with Commissioner Gillis. I think that we should move ahead with that expenditure, especially right now when we don't have meetings in the chamber and people can't come to our meetings. And so having broadcasts is really the only way that people can participate. And we need to be able to meet the requirements of any executive order remote meeting. And so I think that might not be an expenditure that I would be supportive of delaying.
Yeah.
From what I understand, it's not through Mac TV. It's literally in our broadcasting room.
Let me clarify for a second, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. The project that's in the capital improvement plan is the actual equipment that's down in the chambers, which you use on regular meeting nights.
That is correct.
What we're doing right now with the virtual meetings, we're not using that equipment right now. So
That is correct.
we're okay without it at this point, but once we go back to regular meetings and we're using that facility, that's when we might be at risk of being able to broadcast live from that facility.
That is correct, Nancy.
Thank you for that. I guess I would ask the TIFA and the CBD or funds for the lot reconstructs and the design. If we delayed those projects, that money is sort of already allocated towards those projects. And so if we, I guess, is there any way we can save that money? If I'm not sure why it was put on the list. I know that we could, that the project's not going to get any worse, but I guess I'm just like a clarification on why it was.
Well, you're right. The funding has already been allocated for those parking lots through the TIFA board, and we've committed that we would use the funds for those parking lots. And that will pretty much, so anyway, we've made that commitment. The reason we put them on the can be delayed list is because from a structural standpoint, from a construction standpoint, they could be delayed another year and our costs aren't going to greatly increase because it's not going to take it from an overlay to a reconstruct. They're already reconstructs. So the only cost increase would be whatever the industry goes up in the costs. So that's why we put them on the can be delayed list, because in theory, they can be delayed because they're already at the reconstruct stage. But you're right, we already have the funds allocated. So if you wanted to do them next year, we could get the design done, fine tune those numbers, and find out and send them out for bid for next year.
Vice
But
Mayor,
excuse me.
go ahead.
On those TIFA funds, we didn't have enough money to fund all the parking lots that are in the capital improvement plan. With those, the projects for 2021, there will be no money at all left in the TIFA. All future parking lots from 2022 on would then be CIP.
Which was always our plan when we made that change.
Yeah.
Amy?
Yeah, I think that the can be delayed. I agree with Commissioner Gillis that anything that, especially if there's a special assessment, I don't think that's something that we should be doing right now. But anything like the TIFA, where we already have the funds available, and the other reconstructions of Illinois and Gaylord, I do not think that we should eliminate the chamber audio and video, because I know that as we move forward in, technology changes like every 6 months, and we're now realizing at this point that we have to be, willing to move forward with that. So I'm not willing to take that off the table. But on the wastewater, explain to me the flow meter replacements and the HSP equipment. What is, how old are those that we need to replace them? Is it something that we can hold back for a little bit?
As Jason spoke with the water plant, they were comfortable doing that. But Jason, do you have any additional details on those two items?
No, not really. That is the gist of it, is that they were comfortable pushing that back a year with the current condition of those things.
And I guess it's important to emphasize in all of these, when we talked about delaying these, we did talk about just delaying for a year probably. We didn't talk about not doing them, it's delaying them. So I think that's a critical difference in their assessment of the need for them.
Correct.
Yeah. Commissioner Tolis?
I have to concur with Commissioner Gillis and Commissioner Ronan. I think the money's been allocated through the TIFA, and I think we have to go ahead with these lots. If we don't, for example, they're going to wind up like Lot 8, which is at 323,000 or whatever it was. I think there's other things that are necessary that need to be done, but you got Island Park restrooms, you know, improvement that could be held off a little bit. That's 160,000. You got runway 9 approach at 302,000. That's the tree abatement. You got pedestrian lighting and a few other things that can just be delayed. Let's get the necessary stuff done. Let's do the lots that we have the money to fix right now, because if we don't, the rest of the lots are going to get in a poorer condition. They're going to get in that full replacement mode.
Just to let you, Pete, the abatement is grant funded. The little notes on it that tree abatement phase for the airport, the only thing we're putting in is 15 grand. The rest is grants from like the FAA and money from the sky. I'm not sure, but there's more. It's
from FAA and MDOT, and there's a certain schedule that we have to spend those monies on in order to keep receiving those. So that's why we felt that needed to continue to move forward.
I see that on the second page. I missed that. Thanks for the clarification.
No problem.
I guess what I'm hearing from the commission is that we're okay with the sort of recommendations that staff has put forward for the projects that need to move forward. And then with the exception of the parking lot renovations that are paid for by the TIFA and CBD funds, everything else should be delayed. And then, at least on the top half, I think we're just talking about the top half here.
I guess I have one clarification question, Mayor. Some of the commissioners indicated that the local street projects that we had listed, that we should go forward with those. Instead of delaying those, we have 2 listed, the reconstruction of Illinois Street and the reconstruction of Gaylord. My only concern I would have of moving forward with Illinois is there's 2 other projects that go along with that. One would be the streetscape and one would be the pedestrian lighting, similar to what we just did on Michigan Street. So if we move forward with that, I would suggest that we bid those other 2 things as alternates so that we at least have the prices available for them. And then you can assess the funding situation at that time to determine if you want to go forward with those additional amenities when we do the reconstruction of the street. But if we don't do it at that time, then it doesn't happen for a number of years that we would do that. So I would suggest we go ahead and bid those other 2 things as reconstructs, if in fact you want to go forward, or as alternates, if in fact you want to move forward with those 2 reconstructions.
Right. And those street amenities, those don't involve a special assessment, correct?
The street amenities don't, like the stamped concrete and the trees and the tree grates. The ones that typically would be the pedestrian lighting. But again, we can do that as an alternate and look at it at that time. And we could even put the wiring in potentially, with the potential to put the lights in at a later point in time potentially. So we could look at some of those options.
And that wouldn't be a special assessment because those are residential areas and we pay 100% lighting. Is that CD3? That is CD3.
No, Illinois is not. Illinois is in the Central Business District. So Gaylord would not have lighting. We're only proposing lighting on Illinois Street for next year. So that one typically would be a special assessment. But we can bid it separately and evaluate that once we know the funding situation.
I would have reservations about not doing all of the improvements at once. I'd rather forego Illinois for next year in order to do all of it at once. I mean, because if we get a bid and it separate is the pedestrian lighting, it wouldn't make sense to me to go through with the reconstructive Illinois if we weren't doing everything that's needed at the time to that street. That's just my opinion. Because we're going to have to special assess then. So then we're in a pickle of, well, we want this street done, but do we want to special assess? And then we're going to get into a quagmire that, yeah, we'll do the special assessment and then no telling where that'll lead us. So I'd rather postpone that for another year. If Jason believes that we could do that for another year.
Yeah.
And I assume because it says we can be delayed. So I'm assuming you've already made that analysis. Thank you.
Certainly on the reconstructs, they can be delayed. I mean, they're in poor shape. You know, they're in such poor shape that they need to reconstruct. So, yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to go down that road. Just because my personal preference of doing the whole street rather than doing construction on it twice or.
How do others feel about that? Mary?
I sure appreciate the depth of the comments and the thoughts. That sounds like we've come up with some good ideas of what things really can be left where they are or changed as needed.
Pete?
To agree with Commissioner Gillis on that. We should probably just delay it for a year, and then instead of piecemealing it out, do the whole project at one time. It just doesn't make sense to go and fix the road and then come back and put the lighting in later when you already got the streetscape sides already in. You're tearing that all up and redoing it. It makes sense to delay it and do it all at one time, which is going to be a cheaper cost, I feel.
I tend to agree. I think it makes more sense. I think, you know, when you get in that discussion of you're going to reconstruct the street, and if you don't do the street amenities, you know, you're sort of in a pressure situation where it's like, if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? It could be 15, 20 years. Kind of want to get it all done at once. So it looks like we can. So go ahead with the Tifa CBD projects and the local street projects for Gaylord. Is that? I think that's sort of what I'm hearing from the commission. Unless I'm mistaken, let me know.
That's fine.
And then I think we should move down, I guess, to the section where it's can be delayed with possible ramifications. And I think we've had a couple of different opinions on the chamber audio and audio video. I guess I would like to see if maybe put that on hold, but keep it in the conversation in case, because I think if we need it, we should do it. I think it's a reasonable expenditure, and it leads to people being able to access us when we get back in the chamber. But maybe when we have more of an idea of what our budget's going to be, when we talk about our budget later in the year, that would be an item that we could consider again. George, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just not hearing what the problem is, to be honest. Is there someone with the technical expertise who can explain simply in layman's terms within reason how old is the equipment? What's wrong with it?
Chris, can you do that, please?
Sure. So basically, the equipment was sourced and installed between 2007 and 2008 when we moved into the Borden building. And basically what it is there's a series of components that all have to work together to go into the cameras, the audio, get mixed, go back to Mac 3. If you ever peek in the control room, there's just lots of equipment in there, and a lot of it's getting to the age where it starts to fail, and then you try to find something that's compatible, and sometimes that's not stuff you get on Amazon. That's something you have to go find somewhere on the internet and hope it gets shipped to you in the next 2 weeks. So that's where, when we ran into problems, we ran into some last year, and we had some difficulty getting the equipment in place. We had a couple meetings. We couldn't go live, and we just had to record them and then put them out on YouTube or channel 188 at a later time, but people couldn't watch the meetings live.
Yeah, can I still talk, or do I need to, is that part of the policy?
Go ahead.
Okay, no, I think, given what you're describing in terms of aged equipment, it doesn't sound like there's a ready solution to it. I get it. I guess I'd probably argue more in favor of, if that's the case, let's just replace it. It is true that it's the way in which the public interacts with us. So, and if we've had problems with it in the past and it's unreliable, it's not a huge expense. I don't know.
Amy?
Yeah, I've worked with, I've been on a couple of boards, and especially of performing arts studios and such like that. And I can tell you that if it was put in 2007, 2008, it's very old. And I'm surprised that you're able to make it work the way it is, even though you've been able to, piecemeal some of the stuff together. But I know that in order for us to stay in the times and be able to move the things, from video to Mac TV and such like that into YouTube, we have to stay up on top of this. And I think that is very important for us to be transparent with the public and be able to see us live time when we are in meetings. So I'm going to say that we don't put that aside, that's something that we should look at doing right away.
Kristen?
I agree. I think we should get that fixed.
Okay. Are there any other items in that category that people think that feel strongly should either be delayed or not? I'm not seeing any hands. I would like to see the HVAC issue also considered, but that one is probably more related to what the budget looks like later in the year. So it's probably in a good category. I think we can move on to the water projects.
Sorry, where did we land on local streets in that category then for the overlays?
Okay, I think we moved to be okay with delaying Illinois, I believe.
Oh yeah, sure, for the can be delayed category, but with ramifications, we've got a couple overlays in there. I'm not clear. Did you?
Right.
What do you think about that?
University.
Chippewa University, yeah.
I think some of you indicated we should move those to doing them in 2021. Is that where the majority of you are, is to go ahead and move forward with those 2 additional thin overlays? Because we already have other thin overlays that we're doing that year, so we could do those at the same time.
I'm okay
Yeah,
with that.
Go ahead, Lori, sorry.
Yes, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
If
Seeing
you
a lot
can
of
see
headlines.
those thin, forgive me. Thin overlays are 25,000, 19,000, and 2,000 for engineering.
Right.
I think with the big chunk we just took out of the first category, I feel more comfortable with anything in the second category. And of course, I don't want anything to be taking off the category that cannot be delayed, so.
Okay. Now we'll move to water. Like I said before, I would like to see the plant improvement / replacement moved, getting done. Those were really my only thoughts on the water projects.
Keep in mind, these are both water and wastewater, just to be clear.
Right.
Does anybody else have concerns with moving those plant replacements into the cannot be delayed category so that we can get ahead on some of those?
I'm okay with that.
Yep. Mary?
Yeah, I certainly, again, trust the Jason and the whole crew of if something is on the can be delayed with ramifications, if it moves so that it can't be delayed, we've got to take action. And some of it's, again, with grouping things together for pricing, and that makes sense too.
Pete?
Would have to agree with everybody else on that to move forward. If it's something that's got to be done, let's get it done now, because it's not going to get any cheaper, down the line. So.
So what I would envision is if we move these projects that we talked about moving into the cannot be delayed category, what we would do is we would give you a resolution as you approve the capital improvement plan that lists the projects in those 3 categories. And as we develop the actual 2021 budget, we would first make sure we have enough funding to cover everything that's in the cannot be delayed category in the appropriate funds. And then if we project funding is available, we would move up into the with ramification section and see which of those we could fund without too much difficulty based on the funding, and then leave everything else to see what happens next year before we would move forward with any of those projects. So that's how I would see us moving forward based on this discussion.
That makes a lot of sense.
Great.
I think that gives us the direction we need for that part of the resolution, unless anybody has any additional thoughts or comments on those charts.
George, I see your hand up. Hey, George, you're muted right now.
Sorry about that again. I don't have a question about any of this. I think it's great. Perfect. But I don't, can I ask a question that has nothing to do with this, sort of? I mean, I don't understand how, does Public Works have the ability to go out and do stuff? Sort of, I mean, can they like clean gutters out or do some concrete repair around the drains and things like that? As you walk around the city, I wonder if we can think of 2021, I guess, as a maintenance year. You know, I hate to, I mean, if we're not going to do these big things, can we just sort of say, hey, you know, I was tempted to come today with a meeting to the meeting with a hat that says "Make Mount Pleasant Great Again," but I figured you guys would throw me out of the meeting, you know. But you know, it's just these small projects we could do around the city that I would like. If we're not going to do these big things, it'd just anyway. That's my only 2 cents, and I'll be quiet.
And Commissioner Ronan, I think we can look at that. The challenge is many of these projects that we've decided to delay are ones that we would typically contract out and have outside contractors do. So by delaying them doesn't necessarily free up a lot of the staff time in DPW, but it certainly will free up some. And so we could look at doing more of that in-house maintenance that we would typically do. But I just don't want you to expect that you're going to see oodles of that being
No, okay.
because you're not going to have that much extra time.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
do we have any more questions, comments, or concerns for staff on the capital improvement plan in general?
I just wanted to follow up with you, Commissioner Tolis, on one of your comments about the roof for this building. I was looking at that page, and the roof for City Hall isn't projected to be replaced until 2025. So at that point in time, it would be 18 years old. But again, that's projecting out what might happen to it at that point in time. And we would continue to evaluate that as that gets closer to see if we can extend the life of this roof any longer at that point. But the City Hall roof isn't scheduled until 2025.
I saw that when it was scheduled, Mr. Ridley, but the thing I was saying is, at the time that contractor, which is J.E. Johnson that did that roof, all they were trying to do was cut corners. They used the cheapest shingles you could use. And at that time, that was certainty. You could have got GAF or any of the other brands that were guaranteed for 25, 30, 35 years. He's not going to use those because he makes less money. So why would you do that? I'm saying I've got GAF shingles that lasted 25 years before, and I don't really know if that certainty is going to make it till 2025. From what I've seen, just from the discoloration and the patching that's been done and some of the leaks, I don't think it's going to make it there. I hope it does, but again, your condo, the city owns 75% of it. You got to go back to him as a contractor, and he's going to tell you what it's going to cost to fix it. You just can't go get other bids like the mausoleum, where you're contracting it. You're specifying what you want for a product put on there, and you're specifying that you want the 20-year guarantee. Well, you got none of that, and that's why I was saying. That's why I wanted all that clarified, and you did clarify it on the mausoleum.
And actually on the condo too, there's a 3-member condo board, and the city has 2 members on that board, and the other 25% owner just has 1 member. So we do have a little bit more say in the next phase of what happens with those condo elements than what we had in the beginning, fortunately.
And one more question on that. I haven't looked at that condo agreement, but is just the building condoed and the parking lot is owned by the city?
Actually, at this point in time, the parking lot is owned by the Economic Development Corporation. But you're right, it's just the building that's in the condo. So any other questions on the capital improvement plan that we need to address before it comes to you for approval? Or any follow-up questions on the ones we sent out to you today in the Q&A?
Will we get a rough draft of that before our next meeting that we have to decide on that?
Rough draft of the resolution?
Yes.
Yeah, we can try to get that out to you ahead of time.
Okay, I would appreciate that.
And I see that resolution, just to make sure we're all on the same page, that it would say that you would approve the capital improvement plan as presented, except for the 2021 projects in these new categories. So the resolution would just be adjusting the 2021 projects, realizing that next year we're going to have to look at reshaking those out years again based on the deferrals.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 11 more minutes on this work session. Can we go? Did I tell you I was a timekeeper?
I guess with no further comments or question. All right. Well, thanks everybody for your time. And we are adjourned at 10:10.
Everybody have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.